Hello everybody, my name is Bob Robertson.
And I'm Chip Chipson. And today, it's time for Bob and Chip at the Movies. Today we're reviewing the movie The Batman. We'll tell you everything about it, whether you love to see it, Bob.
You love to see it, Chip, or if you hate to see it, Chip.
You hate to see it, Bob. Let's get to the review. So just a quick overview of the movie. You want to give them the overview, or should I give them the main overview?
Well, it's a new take on the Batman.
Would you love to see it, Bob?
You love to see it, Chip, as the Batman is not just a crime fighter in this film, he's also a detective.
And not to mention a very young crime fighter at that.
Indeed. In this movie, it's based on the Long Halloween, in which Batman is 2 years in to his prolonged tenure as Batman.
And the good news is this movie does take a different take. We don't see the Joker. This is a completely different villain. They're going with the Riddler, which I've always thought the Riddler is a very good Batman villain to go with because he's one of the few that can actually challenge Batman intellectually. You love to see it, Bob?
You love to see it, Chip.
You also got Catwoman in this movie. You got the Penguin in this movie. You got Alberto Falcone in this movie. A whole bunch of different characters that really add to it. Whether they're main villains or not, they're still in it. So they're building the world of Gotham, which is nice to see.
You love to see it, Chip.
You love to see it, Bob. So shall we get to the first segment, which is you love to see it. So the first thing we love to see about this movie is that it's not your typical superhero beat-em-up movie. It is an actual mystery movie.
And they did a great job working on the plot to kind of expand this whole other side of Batman to where the riddles are almost so complex as the viewer that you don't realize it until Batman realizes it.
And just to be fair, this isn't one of those mystery movies you can solve as the movie goes along. You can't solve it on your own, but to see Batman come up and resolve with how all these clues match together is interesting. And that's a thing I feel a lot of the Batman movies have missed, Bob, is that all these other Batman movies, I mean, we get it. Batman's a great fighter, crime stopper, but we never really see the detective aspect.
We never do.
And you hate to see that, Bob.
You hate to see that, Chip. Just such a misrepresented, part of the character.
And that's one of the biggest parts. I mean, yeah, he's the Dark Knight, he's the Caped Crusader.
But he's also the world's greatest detective.
So the fact that they made this a mystery movie where we actually see the world's greatest detective at work. Again, he's young, so he's still kind of learning the ropes along the way. You love to see it, Bob. You love to see it. On to the next one. The next thing we loved to see was the very beginning of the movie. Sounds like a small portion, but oh, you love to see it, Bob.
Oh, you love to see it, Chip.
I'll let you describe it, because you described it perfectly last time.
What we're talking about is not necessarily the first 5 minutes. The first 5 minutes is literally the Riddler breathing while watching somebody in a room.
And at first it was nice, it set up a creepy atmosphere, but after a while you just got to hate to see it, Bob.
You hated to see it, Chip. You hated to hear
it,
Chip.
Hated to hear it, Bob, yes.
But what we're talking about is after that, Batman is pretty much giving us the rundown of how he's kind of getting into his role as the Batman and the reputation that he has over the city and how he can't be everywhere. But they use that to show his reputation around Gotham because you see all of these criminals doing, well, in Batman status, smaller crimes, and then you see the light come on, the light, the bat signal. Everybody knows what that symbol is. And then, as a man is doing graffiti,
which you hate to see that,
you hate to see it, Chip. And the spray can rolls into the darkness, and that criminal won't even go into the dark area. The man who's robbing the gas station won't go into the dark alley where he's trying to get away. He just runs a different direction because he sees that light. And I mean, Batman even says it. It's that light's not just a symbol for me, it's a warning for them.
And it's also the fact that Batman lurks in the darkness.
Yes.
So like, well, if it's dark and that bat signal's on, I'm not going. And the thing I liked about this, Bob, was that every Batman movie you see, there's a crime going on, Batman's there. Mm-hmm. There's something going down, Batman's there. This time, we see at least 2 crimes where he doesn't even show up, and the crime is still interrupted thanks to his reputation over the past 2 years. You love to see it, Bob.
I love to see it, Chip.
On to the next one.
On to the next segment.
Alright, so the next thing we're going to talk about, we're going to expand this segment a little bit and just kind of round out everything that makes up the Batman. Starting with Robert Pattinson, the actor. What did you think? I know I was extremely worried when I heard Mr. Robert Pattinson from Twilight was going to be the Batman.
Well, Chip, I thought, personally, like many people, that he wasn't necessarily getting a fair shake at the beginning. Because we saw, when the reports came out that Heath Ledger was going to play the Joker in The Dark Knight. Everybody was really worried. Everybody was really, concerned that this guy who played in Brokeback Mountain could actually pull off the Joker, and he did phenomenal.
So I remember there was also Michael Keaton. When he first came out as the Batman, people were like, he's a comedy actor, he can't do it because of his role in Beetlejuice. And the same thing with Ben Affleck. A lot of people thought he couldn't pull off the Batman.
Exactly. So we've seen a lot of actors lately taking on roles that that you wouldn't think they would be able to take on, and they still killed it. And I think Robert Pattinson absolutely nailed it. His performance was simple, it was subtle, but still at the same time, it just, in my opinion, encapsulated the Batman. Bruce Wayne, what they did to that version of his character, I'm a little,
and we'll talk
not
about
very
that
impressed
in a few
about.
minutes.
But as far as the Batman, he, in my opinion, he nailed the character.
And I think my favorite thing, Bob, was the fact that the voice. The voice was subtle. It wasn't the voice-changing modulation of Ben Affleck, and it wasn't also the "Where's the trigger?" of Christian Bale. It was very subtle, but it worked.
Yeah, Christian Bale seemed a little forced.
It did seem a little forced. Yeah, I hate to see that, Bob. But as far as Robert Pattinson before it, you love to see it, Bob.
You love to see it, Chip.
The next part we're going to cover is the Batmobile. The Batmobile in this movie, it's very simple compared to a lot of the other ones. It doesn't have all the flashiness of the others, but I thought it was a really good Batmobile.
I thought it was a really good Batmobile. My only complaint about the Batmobile, it was underused.
Underused. They have like one scene with it, and then it's never seen from again. However, to be fair, Batman Begins did the same thing. They showed it for one chase scene to get away from Scarecrow, and police were hunting him.
Also, at the same time, when you think about it, Batman deals a lot in stealth.
It's true,
so he doesn't want to drive in a very noticeable.
That's very true, and it was still a sleek, nice, and something that you would have, something that he's decided, I'm going to be this crime fighter. I need a nice car. It's like he took an older car off the market and just kind of souped it up to meet his needs for this.
Absolutely.
Could it change in the future? Absolutely, but if it doesn't, I'm okay with it, Bob.
I'm okay with it too.
And now to add on, we're just going to kind of segue into the Batmobile scene. Now, again, I agree. I wish it had been used more because but the chase scene, probably one of the best chase scenes in a Batman movie. It's right up there with Ben Affleck's scene in Batman v Superman. I think it might actually beat the Batman v Superman scene.
I agree 100%.
So you love to see it?
Oh, I love to see it, Chip.
On to the next one, the Batman suit. I thought the Batman suit was really nice. It was, again, the fact that he's only just into his career. He hasn't had too much time to experiment with all this stuff, but it looks like a suit that he's experimented on, kind of found what works. Maybe he's still tinkering with it, but I thought he fit the suit really nicely.
I thought it fit the suit really nicely.
And I thought the suit was especially, like, you had the chest piece actually turned out to be a part of the suit. It was an actual gadget. I will say we didn't see enough gadgets. I think that was one complaint I had. But other than that, the bat suit, the functionality was still bulletproof. He's still able to take a few shots before he goes down to any pain. I thought they did an excellent job. It was a nice looking bat suit.
So what you're trying to tell me is you love to see it, Chip.
You love to see it, Bob. On to the next section. So the next section, we kind of have to separate it. There will be another section about this. But first off, the actor who played the Riddler did a phenomenal job.
Phenomenal.
When we actually see him take off the mask and you actually see his face, when I saw the actor that was going to play him, I was like, I don't know if he can pull it off, Bob. I thought it would be, I hate to see it, Bob.
Absolutely. I would think you'd hate to see it too, Chip.
But you didn't hate to see it, you love to see it,
You
Bob.
love to see it, Chip.
He had the face that just showed this dude is mentally unstable, and yet he's one of the smartest characters. I think he actually outsmarted Batman in this film.
I think they kind of took that from what you hear all the time in Criminal Minds is sometimes the criminal is a better profiler than the profiler.
That is true.
So,
I mean, he was able, I'm not going to spoil too much, but he was able to deduce a lot, and he was able to set Batman up a lot. There's one particular scene near the end of the movie where Batman follows the clues the Riddler gave him. In fact, this is a little bit of a spoiler, so spoiler warning somewhere on there. We'll edit it in later. But anyway, there was one part where Riddler gave Batman a clue. Batman to solve the riddle, did what the clue told him, and it ended up working in Riddler's favor. And the thing is, by the end of the movie, Riddler actually thought Batman was working with him because of how well these clues fit together and how well Batman solved them. He just thought, oh, okay, he's working with me. The scene where he was talking to him. Right. So I thought Riddler did a really good job, and the actor just, when I saw his face for the first time, he looked like the Riddler.
And what I think I liked about this character who played the Riddler is once they took the mask off, you could see that he was mentally unstable, but he was almost unassuming. Like you would never assume he would pass find in normal society. You wouldn't expect him to be this Riddler.
And you love to see it,
You
Bob.
love to see that, Chip.
So the next one, we're not going to keep on this one too long, but I thought, even though it was a short little bit that we got to see him, the Penguin, I thought was fantastic. What did you think, Bob?
I thought it was great. Played by Colin Farrell. In my opinion, from what I've seen the most noticeably is in Total Recall, the main lead character. But he did put on a significant amount of weight for the role, and the prosthetics used, you would never actually guess it was Colin Farrell. It was just phenomenal.
They did a good job, and even just, I know it's a little thing, but the voice just sounded like something you would expect the Penguin to sound like.
Absolutely.
Especially based, it was different, of course, than Danny DeVito's impression of the Penguin, but I thought this one, if they include him, it looks like they're including him to kind of be the one that takes over some of Gotham's crime. Now that the Riddler's been, not dealt with, but he's not there.
Absolutely.
But the Riddler, it looks like the Penguin's going to be the one to take over, and I thought that Colin Farrell did an excellent job as the Penguin. While, again, short part, excellent performance that you just love to see, Bob.
You love to see it, Chip.
All right, and I think this is the last love to see it part of the segment, was the action sequences. Now, we talked about this early on. At first, it's not a big action movie. So don't go there expecting guns blazing and fight scenes every 15 minutes like you would in some superhero movies. Again, this is more of a crime-solving mystery movie. But the action sequences that were in this were phenomenally put together.
Phenomenally put together.
I still think, and this is just my opinion, the fight sequence scene in Batman v Superman is still my favorite Batman fight sequence. I don't think anything's going to top that, mostly because I'm a big Arkham video games fan, and you love to see it, Bob.
You love to see it.
The fact that those fight scenes resembled that game so much. But I did love these action sequences. They're kind of short, kind of simple, but so well put together that they really work well.
I have nothing to add to that.
Yeah,
that was
nothing
beautifully
to add?
said.
Well, you love to see it,
You
Bob.
love to see it, Chip.
But now, so there are some things in a movie that, well, you hate to see it, Bob.
I hate to see him, Chip.
So the first part of you hate to see it goes back to Robert Pattinson. Now again, as an actor and as acting as Batman, he was phenomenal. However, at the beginning of his role, he said he had trouble bulking up for the part, and then later on I read an article
You
that
can't
said...
fault a man for genetics.
No, you can't. But I did see an article where he was like, oh, I was kidding, I was doing good. So I got a little hyped, and then I saw him and I was like, you're better than you were in Twilight, but you're not a Batman.
He actually looked slightly bigger in the trailer than he did in the actual film. And I don't know if that's because we saw a prolonged shot of Batman's physique.
It could be.
Or if they maybe touched him up in the trailer to get people more hyped. But
And I mean, overall, he still looked good.
Right.
He still is in what can be considered superhero shape.
Right.
I just don't think it's Batman superhero. So there's a difference. Like, no hating on Robert Downey Jr.
No.
Excellent Iron Man. But Iron Man doesn't have to be super physical.
Right.
I mean, most of his powers come from the
does the
suit.
work, yeah.
And while Batman, most of his powers come from his gadgets, it comes from his fighting ability and his strength. I mean, in Batman Year One, a comic that came out written by Frank Miller, which if you ever want to start reading Batman, start it with Year One. Excellent comic. But he's able to kick a tree in half in one kick.
Wow.
And I don't
know
see
how you
Robert
do that
Pattinson
instead of
doing
using
that.
an axe, but I'm all for that.
And I'm not faulting Robert Pattinson. I mean, he may bulk up more. He may not. If he doesn't, it's not a make or break for me. It's not like, oh, I hated the Batman.
Because this is still a young novice Batman.
Exactly. And you know what? It works for what they're trying to say. So I don't know if they're trying to do so. A good example, Christopher Nolan. I thought that Christian Bale in his movies he was in good shape. Again, I don't think it was what Batman shape would be, comic book wise.
Right.
However, Christopher Nolan made it clear that his movies were based more on what Batman would be like in real life. Which is why the Joker wasn't dropped in acid, he was just a criminal mastermind. The Scarecrow was just a guy that knew how to use fear toxins. So some of the things were changed. There was no Venom when it came to Bane, but he made it more real life.
Right.
So it worked.
Right.
But then you had Zack Snyder's version in Batman v Superman. That was more Superman's in this world. You know, Superman wouldn't have existed in Christopher Nolan's world, but Superman existed in this one. So Ben Affleck beefing up made perfect sense.
Right.
So if they kind of go in the Christopher Nolan route, a little less other superheroes live here and it's more real life, I think the physique works better.
Right.
But if they try to go with, Superman's in this world and Flash is in this world and there are super powerful beings, I think he's going to need to bulk up a little more.
Right.
But as far as physique, you hate to see it,
I
Bob.
hate to see it, champ.
Next part of that, we're going to piggyback off of that into the separation between Bruce Wayne and Batman. It was non-noticeable.
They were pretty much the same person.
Now, originally, I kind of looked over this because I was like, it's his second year into crime fighting. So I was like, okay, we can kind of brush that off to the side.
Mm.
But then I read Batman Year One, and he's like, I need to keep up a facade. I need to be jokey. I need to be, he seems like a drunkard.
This big deal.
Exactly, a womanizer. He's basically Tony Stark,
Right.
millionaire, playboy, philanthropist type.
Yeah.
But you didn't see that much in here.
No.
Anything you want to add to that, Bob?
No.
I mean, there's not much to add. I mean, it was
I don't
just
like adding things that you hate to see.
you really
Chip.
hate to see it, Bob.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just move on to the next one, which unfortunately is still Batman. Was the relationship between Alfred and Bruce Wayne. I did not like it.
Now, you could argue the fact that he's young and still grieving the death of his parents because it takes a long time to get over something like that. But still, you think you would cling to that last bit of family that you have instead of pushing him away in a sense.
And I think the best movie to represent that. Every movie has had Bruce Wayne and Alfred have a good relationship.
Right.
Yeah, they get in their scuffles, but it's not throughout the whole movie. I mean, they had a scuffle in Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins. They had an argument, I believe.
The Dark Knight Rises.
The Dark Knight Rises they had where he completely leaves, and then at the end he's still smiling at him.
Right.
So that relation in Batman v Superman, they're joking with each other. They're picking at each other. You're no longer, you've grown too old to die young, not for lack of trying.
Yeah.
I didn't feel there were enough jokes and to show that relationship, how much they've grown. There wasn't that joking around like, oh, hey, we pick on each other, but we're still good friends.
And even this
like you and me, Bob.
Like you and me, Chip. This doesn't reveal a huge plot point, but there's a scene when Alfred wakes up, and the moment he wakes up, which you'll get the context when you go see the film, Bruce Wayne's like, you lied to me. And I'm like, well, that's what I want to hear in the morning.
Exactly, and you'll figure out why him waking up and hearing that is a big deal. But you hate to see it, Bob.
Yeah, I hate to see it, Chip.
And the last thing, we're not trying to pick on Robert Pattinson too much. Again, overall, I give him A. I think he did a great job. But the only other thing was, and this wasn't his fault, I felt there weren't enough lines. I felt like, now for Batman, perfect.
Yep.
Batman is kind of a straight to the point, doesn't waste words.
Man,
kind
a
of
few
dude.
words, yeah.
So that worked for Batman, but I felt with Bruce Wayne, and again, I think the reason is we didn't see a lot of Bruce Wayne with the public. That might be why. He's mostly with Alfred in the Batcave, with Catwoman, with Riddler, whoever he's talking to.
Right.
But I still feel like he didn't get enough lines. I felt like he should have been able to talk more.
Bruce Wayne didn't get enough screen time or enough time with people. He's reclusive in this one, and in The Dark Knight Rises, he was only reclusive because he had just lost Rachel.
Exactly.
Versus as long as, his parents have, been deceased in this one, while it's, it's a hard thing to get over, you would think he'd be putting up a facade.
And also, there was the fact that Harvey Dent had taken care of a lot of Gotham's criminals at this point. So there really was nobody else. The Joker was, from what we can assume, locked up in Arkham. I know it's because the unfortunate passing of Heath Ledger is why he wasn't in it. He may have made a cameo otherwise. But we can only assume he was locked up because he didn't die at the end of Dark Knight.
No.
He was still around. All the other criminals were locked up because of Harvey Dent. So it makes sense that he could recluse. But I think, I'm trying not to let that be too much of a big thing, but I do think he deserved more lines. I do think it's because mostly he was kind of in himself, by himself in the Batcave. But either way, you hate to see it,
Yeah, to see it, Chip.
So the next thing we're going to talk about, this is just one little nitpick. We won't spend too much time on it. At first, when I saw Catwoman, she had the one-piece zip-up suit that zips up to the neck. It looked so comic book accurate. I was excited. I was happy. I thought, okay, they've changed it from what I saw in the trailer.
And then...
They didn't! They left it the way it was, Bob!
They did.
Look, I understand she's just a regular
Let me
girl
explain.
living in a regular apartment, but if you're a cat burglar, and it seems like she's been doing this for a decent amount of time, you should have come up with a great cat mask by now.
Let's look at
You take it away, Bob. I can't.
Let's look at why he's so upset. Basically, the Catwoman's mask is a beanie that you pull over just the first half of the face, and then you cut a little slit around the eyes, or a big gaping hole around the eyes. And that's her mask.
I think
there are ears though. There are certain angles. There are certain angles you can see the ears.
Now, I would have actually been more okay if
With
it was
no
a
mask.
ski mask with the 2 holes here, the hole here, and then cat ears. That would have been even better. But this one looks like if she runs too fast, it's going to slip right over her nose. It doesn't cover the mouth at all. Now, granted, I will say the original Catwoman mask didn't cover any of her face.
Right.
But I don't think she cared about that.
Right.
But I think if you're going to go for, we need to cover her face, you should do it a little more proud, because this just, it didn't work for me. If you liked it, that's fine.
And
But
another
for me,
thing about Catwoman that didn't look right for me is it looked like most of her fight scenes were CGI. And it wasn't very good CGI.
like Robert Pattinson's fights, if it was CGI, he looked like he did most of the work.
Yeah.
With Catwoman, it did look fake. Wasn't bad enough, again, to ruin it, but you hate to see it, Bob.
You hate to see it, Chip.
Another costume design choice I had a problem with, I don't know if you did or not, was Riddler. Now, I'm not saying Riddler's design was bad, and at the end of the movie we find out there was a purpose for it.
And honestly, you can't really do a green question mark suit and make it look good.
No,
you know,
you can't.
it's going to look kind of campy.
But what I will say is, I hated that. I didn't hate the suit, I guess I should say. I hated that he wore the mask so long. I felt that the way the actor portrayed Riddler, we should have seen him more. Because the Riddler was never a mask-wearing type of vigilante or villain anyway.
No.
He was more, here I am, I'm Edward Nygma. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
He didn't care about being, like a lot of, I figured that out. A lot of the villains in Batman don't care who they are.
And this is a little fun fact. His head was wrapped in saran wrap when they did those scenes.
Was it really?
It was, and he was sweating and like getting close to
Well, that's
passing
just
out.
cruel.
That's really cruel, and quite frankly, you hate to see it. Chip.
You hate to see it, Bob. Alright, so now it's time to rank the movie. Now, since this is our first review, we'll give you kind of a rundown of the rankings. Start us off, Bob.
Well, if we think the movie is interesting, we think the plot is pretty good, and we like the characters, and it's just an all-around entertaining film, you'll love to see it.
And if we think that the movie wasn't that great and you don't need to really, if you wait for it to come out on DVD, not
That's
a big deal. You get you hate to see it. Now, if we decide the movie was really good and we really liked it, it not only gets a love to see it ranking, but it gets the Bob and Chip, you love to see it seal of approval. So with this movie, we rank it with you love to see it.
You love to see it.
And it also gets the Bob and Chip love to see it seal of approval.
Forgot one. Don't even bother.
How long have you been here?
The whole segment, which sucked, by the way.
Well, only thing I can say about this is you hate to see it, Bob.
You hate to see it, Chip.
I guess this is Angry Mike's review.